Welcome to the Mean Lady Talking Podcast. This is the podcast that tackles tough questions about relationships, life, love, and loss. It may not be the advice you want, but is probably the advice you need. And now here's your host, grief therapist, motivational speaker, relationship expert, best-selling author, and attorney, the not really mean lady herself, Susan J. Elliott.
Good day, everybody. This is Susan Elliott, host of the Mean Lady Talking Podcast, and it's Friday. It is a listener email show, and I have a lot of things to get to, but I wanted to let you know that Tuesday's show is going to be part 3 of navigating the legal system with the personality disordered, and it is going to be about having to deal with legal issues when your ex is personality disordered. But today I'm going to have a little bit of a different take on things, and I'll just read the letter and then we'll talk about it. Okay, it says, Dear Susan, I remember reading your articles in Psychology Today about the show Catfish. At the time, I thought it was really stupid and how could people be so gullible? Needless to say, over the past 6 months, I was talking to a guy and fell for him really hard, really fast. I broke all of your online dating rules. I didn't insist on talking to him on the phone right away. I didn't insist on video chatting, and I didn't insist on many other things. As a result, I was pretty much catfished. And the only reason I got out so soon was because my best friend kept looking him up the same way that they do on the MTV show Catfish. And she was the one who had to basically throw a bucket of cold water over my head before I would even listen. I can't believe how far in I got so fast. If you could, please remind me what it is you said about these relationships. I would really appreciate it because I believe that I need a refresher course, and anyone who is doing online dating really needs to be aware of the fact that there are plenty of people out there who are more than willing to catfish you if you let them. Okay, that was interesting and I wasn't expecting it, but I will go back to some of the points I made when I did a series on catfishing for Psychology Today. And I had not heard of the show Catfish, and my son asked me if I had ever seen it, and I wasn't even sure what Catfish was. But because I'm an attorney and I'm a therapist, and I have somebody who has a lot of clients, both in law and in counseling, with bizarre internet stories, I'm incredibly aware of these things that happen without knowing that it had an actual name. So part of the problem, and I hate to say this, is that when I watched Catfish, I sat down and watched like 5 episodes in a row. Then a few days later, I watched 5 more, and then a few days later, 5 more. And I wasn't terribly surprised about any of it. And it's really sad that I was as skeptical as I was even going into it. But I've been doing this a long time. And one of the terrible truths that I've had to gently and not so gently let people know is that it's easy to be duped when your heart is leading and you just want to be loved. One of the reasons I've developed and insisted upon the relationship inventory in my practice, my books, my workbook, and my boot camps is that it's really important to note the red flags and hints that there might be trouble that you had from the very beginning of the relationship that didn't work out. I know it's hard to go back and do the relationship inventory, especially when you're going through a very difficult breakup, but it's really important to figure out where the train wreck could have been predicted and avoided. Still, I find that even people that do the relationship inventory and learn from it can make the same mistake again, even though they supposedly know better. I see them ignoring the red flags, but thinking it's okay because they're different red flags than they were the last time. Sometimes when you're nervous and afraid of being hurt, an online relationship has a draw. It's almost easier to fall into one than an in real life relationship. There are are some people who fall for people who they know will not like them in real life. There was a woman on the show when I was watching the Catfish episodes. There was one woman who was in love with a guy who didn't like kids, and she had a child and she kept it a secret. I mean, that should be a deal breaker. If you have a child and a person puts in their profile, I don't like kids, I don't want kids. If you have kids, I don't want to date you. You don't talk to that person. This woman was just falling all over herself for this guy. Like, what is she going to do? Shove a kid in the closet when he comes over? There was another person who was very overweight and was parading as a personal trainer and having this online relationship with somebody who is very much into fitness. Okay, this is not only not somebody that you want to be with, but somebody who really doesn't want to be with you. Why waste time, energy, and whatever else it is you spend doing these things? I mean, what are you trying to prove? You're trying to prove like, oh, well, I'll overcome their dislike of children or dislike of overweight people. You know, I'll make them fall in love with me, and then they'll realize, oh, my goodness, I fell in love with a mother. Oh, my goodness, I fell in love with a fat person. Oh, well, you know, I should really check my vanity at the door. That's not what happened. In Getting Back Out There, we talk about the standards and compatibility inventory. I insist that everybody do it. It has to be honest. But the two relationships that I talked about were relationships that would not work in real life. One was a catfish and one was a catfish, but each of them was dishonest. So what is the point of this dishonesty? People who go into relationships with people who will never love the real them usually have intimacy issues. This is something I talked about in the very last podcast. You get into relationships with someone who will not be a real candidate for a long-term relationship. You tell yourself you really want true love in real life, but your actions tell a completely different story. Whether it's you dating one commitment phobe after another, or you're somebody who's catfishing, or you're somebody who gets catfished. The person who's catfished is not always squeaky clean either. Some of the people who were catfished are people that have just hung on a ridiculous amount of time. 3 years, 5 years, 10 years. I mean, 10 years. Who hangs on to a relationship for 10 years and doesn't meet the person? This is somebody who's really not falling over themselves to be in a real intimate relationship. The person who gets catfished, their deception is more covert than overt, and they're even deceiving themselves. If you have a child and you're in love with somebody who doesn't like children, how is that even possible that you could really want to have that as a partner in real life? Remember the 3 a.m. person. That person is not going to respond well at the 3 a.m. scenario. So if you want an honest to goodness real life relationship and you pick people that are completely incompatible with you, you're either fooling yourself or purposely being foolhardy because you're afraid of intimacy. Most people who are catfish would describe themselves as good and trusting, which is an issue because I say no, you are naive and gullible. In fact, I saw one catfish episode. It was so convoluted, I couldn't even keep track of who was doing what. But the woman said, they asked her, do you trust this person? And she said, yeah, we have a relationship. If you don't have trust, you don't have anything else. But it's like, you don't have a relationship. Just because you're telling each other you're boyfriend and girlfriend, but you've never video chatted, you don't really know that this is the person in the pictures. You don't trust first. I mean, that's leading with your chin. Trust is something that is gained over time. And as it turned out, she couldn't be trusted. The other guy couldn't be trusted. I mean, nobody in this whole episode could be trusted. So this big sweeping statement about this was ridiculous. If you don't have trust, you don't have anything. Well, they didn't have trust and they didn't have anything. I mean, it's not trusting, it's foolish. If you put yourself out as trusting and loving, that doesn't mean it's so. Like I said, this woman said, if you don't have trust, you don't have anything, in this big sweeping general statement. But she wasn't being honest about her profile or her name or anything else, and neither was the other guy. I mean, it was hard to tell who was catfishing who. So many times I have to let people in on the fact that they need to drop the adjective trusting and replace it with stupid. And yes, I know know how harsh that sounds. This is called the Mean Lady Talking for a reason. If you want soft and sweet, you need to read somebody else's articles, listen to somebody else's podcast, because that's not what you're going to get here. But let's forget trusting and or stupid for a moment, and let's talk healthy and unhealthy. It's important to note that healthy people don't get fooled to the degree that many on the show Catfish do. Some are incredibly trusting and loving people, but that doesn't mean that they're healthy enough to carry on a relationship in the long term, mostly online. Some people are just too eager to believe someone else's lies. And no matter how you look at it, most of what they get are simply lies about someone who exists pretty much in their mind and no one else. Even the catfisher has made stupid mistakes that would allow a tuned-in person to say, oh, wait a minute. But the catfish person often ignores it. Red flag, pink flag, flashing neon signs. They ignore it and carry on as if they didn't see that. Didn't say it, didn't know it. That's not there. One thing to think about is, what do you get from an online relationship that is not being translated into real life? For one, it's easy to build something in your mind that has little to nothing to do with real life, but it has excitement, it has intensity, it has romance, it has new love, it has all these things that we conjure up in our brains when we're bored or we're fantasizing or whatever the hell it is we're doing. But again, think about the 3 a.m. person. The 3 a.m. person is not romantic or sexy or wonderful. It's about hands-on, real life, honey, let's fix this problem. When your relationship is strictly online, you don't have to share your friends, your daily grind, or your schedule with someone else. You have to nag somebody to do the dishes, pick up the wet towels on the floor, take your shoes off the bed. There are so many things you don't have to worry about when it's a strictly online relationship. Fitting a new, in real life relationship can be tough sometimes. So you have to admit that allowing a relationship to exist solely online has its benefit. While there is occasionally a catfisher who is just someone who got in too deep, too fast, and didn't know how to make that U-turn and turn around, so many of them are unclear as to the damage they're doing to others. And then there's others who just simply don't care. There are so many of the catfishes, when they're caught, they just under-emote. They don't really have an attachment to the relationship that developed online, while the catfish person is overly attached. Now, there are outliers, and I've watched enough of the show to see that there are people who know the catfish person and either want to be close to them or want to get back at them. But I'm talking about the majority of the catfishes who are clearly pathological in that they really don't understand the gravity of what they're doing to someone else. I have a huge population of clients and boot campers who are dealing with the personality disordered. And I am offering a boot camp for the very first time this year, and I've been researching this stuff for more than a year. It's going to be my next book. But if there is any playground for the personality disordered, it is online dating. And if you've watched Catfish, you know that there are people who are not who they say they are. The photo's not them. The profile's not theirs. And sometimes the person you've spoken to on the phone is not them. Sometimes there are 2 or more people who are in on the catfish, and the person who is the gender that you think you're talking to is the one on the phone. These people will not video chat with you because they don't look like the photo, and there's a bunch of them, so you can't keep up the ruse while on video chat. If you're talking with somebody more than 1 or 2 times and they won't video chat with you, something is wrong. Very, very, very wrong. Do not pass go. Do not collect $200. Forget this one. Throw this fish back in. People who are good people and screw up have so much angst when they apologize or say they did something wrong. But I don't see that in most of the catfishers. I just don't see it. I saw one catfish, and I admit I haven't seen all the episodes. There's like 7 seasons. I haven't seen all of them. I haven't seen many this season. But there was one catfisher who took what he did and how he hurt somebody to heart, and he was really upset. But there are way too many who minimize, justify, rationalize, excuse their behavior with almost a shrug, saying things like, okay, I'm not perfect, no one is, da, 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 da. Losers, 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 losers without a conscience. I mean, I can't bump somebody's cart in the grocery store without saying I'm sorry. These people are like taking money and developing online relationships and doing all kinds of crazy crap. And they're like, oh, sorry, blah. Nobody's perfect. Shoot me, sue me, blah. Ridiculous. Really good people never say things like, oh, I'm not perfect. Really good people take their own wrongdoing to heart and feel terrible about it. Unfortunately, really good people don't get that not everyone does. I mean, we talk about this constantly, frame of reference. We think that this can't be happening to us because this is not something we would do to someone else. So we assume that somebody's not doing it to us. But we would be wrong. One thing that runs through many of those who catfish others is the lack of emotion and remorse. That is very pathological, cluster B, personality disorder, pathology, narcissist, sociopath. Even when catfishers appear to feel emotion, they seem to feel it about themselves. Again, pathological. Other times they try to convince people that they're sorry and they do feel badly. But their behavior, observed by someone like me who sees a lot of this, you can tell that they're just feigning feeling bad. The catfishers almost always say, I didn't want you to get hurt. But what else could be the result when someone has been lied to? These random, albeit stupid, remarks by catfishers show how out of touch they are with reality and how much they affect others, and they just don't get it. Some catfishers are so arrogant. And even one person who lied to get on the show was arrogant and unapologetic. It was like they lied on top of lies on top of lies. It was like they were lying to everybody. That is really something that irks me, and I can tell that it really irks Neve and Max as well. It's really horrible when somebody can't even bring themselves to give a sincere apology, after trashing somebody who really cared about the persona that they set forth. I mean, maybe that's why they don't have any feelings, because who they presented wasn't the real them, because the real them is a scumbag, basically. Not every catfisher is pathological or really sick, but everyone is damaged in some way, because healthy people don't do what catfishers do. Not everyone is a personality disordered, self-centered mess. Some are good people who are ashamed of their real stories, not having money, not being good looking, maybe having a record, and they don't have enough self-esteem to say, this is me, take me or leave me. We talk about that all the time, about fear of being hurt, fear of being rejected. But the thing that you have to work on is that if somebody doesn't want you for you, they're not the person for you. That doesn't mean you're going to be alone for the rest of your life. It just means that this is not the person for you. I just did a video on my YouTube channel, the 5 R's, the bumps in the dating road. Go look at it and see about the rejection part, because I do this whole overview about rejection. If you can get over that bump in the road, the whole rejection, if you can reframe it, if you could turn it around, you can deal with rejection in online dating or in regular dating, any kind of dating. But no matter what reason someone catfishes, they're damaged and they're not healthy. It's just the degree of it. But it's not their responsibility to not hurt you. It's your responsibility to not hurt you. So why are you this far in without insisting on a video chat or an in real life meeting. Why? It's not their fault that you let this go on this long. They might be scum, they might be personality disorder, but you're responsible for going along with this charade. The catfishes minimize the BS that they put someone through. They say, oh, it's not my intention to hurt you. It's not my intention to be false. Not my intention, da 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 da. But their actions say otherwise. They are all completely full of shit. And I tell people intentions are for naught. I actually say intentions are for shit because they are. It doesn't matter what you intend. It matters what you do. So whenever someone says, I didn't intend to, I say it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what the hell your intentions were. It matters what you do. And whether or not you intend to hurt someone, it matters that you hurt them. So put your intentions and this I don't mean bullshit right in the garbage where it belongs. And yes, hurt people, but because you've been hurt doesn't give you license to hurt someone else. There are no excuses, ever. Love is an action. Honesty is an action. Intentions are for, you know. There was one woman who catfished someone for money, and she said, and I almost fell off the couch on this one. She said, I'm a mother, and a mother will do what she has to do for her kids. Oh, sweetheart. Oh, freaking no. Whether she believed that or not, it's not true. I was a single mother. I worked 3 jobs when my oldest came back home to live, and I had 3 teenage boys eating me at house and home, and my ex would not raise child support. I worked 3 jobs. I didn't go catfish somebody. And most women will not scam somebody out of money to create a relationship with someone that doesn't really exist. Many mothers will prefer to be good role models for their kids. I was single and exhausted, and I did what I needed to do for my kids. Taking money from men never occurred to me. But when someone catfishes and then rationalizes their behavior or something they did for their kids, you throw up your hands, you call bullshit, and you know that they are unreachable. The problem is that these people break other people's hearts without even thinking about it. But here's a clue. No one is responsible for your feelings except you. You cannot be led to the gallows unless you're willing to go. And the longer it goes on, the more you're responsible. These relationships cannot go on and on and on without 2 willing participants. You have to take responsibility for your part. I have known many sociopaths and narcissists in my life. Seems lately I can't swing a cat without hitting one. Their behavior doesn't surprise me. What does surprise me is the behavior of the person who was catfished. It's sometimes so naive that it's hard to watch because it's just not that unusual. One thing that bothered me in one of the episodes of Catfish was that even knowing that someone lied, even knowing that the person used someone else's photos, even knowing the person was hiding a whole lot, the person who was catfished might still have been interested in them. What happens in almost every single budding relationship, not just catfished or online relationships, is that there's a relationship that goes on in someone's head and one that actually exists. And they're 2 very different relationships. They're related in varying degrees. Sometimes it's a close relationship and other times not so much. So the fact that someone finds out that the online person and the real life person are different, it's not that unusual. I write about online dating and expectations and getting back out there. And even though I've tried to ground people in reality, both as to what they're putting out and what they're taking in, things go awry. Most people who are catfished want to believe that true love exists. The people catfished are almost always very in deep emotionally. And most of the time they have a relationship in their head with someone that is not only made up by the catfisher, but also made up by the catfished. I've said it over and over again. Water seeks its own level. If you're attracted to and attracting someone who doesn't even exist, what does that say about you? It says you have some issues to work through. And you can't do anything about anyone except you, even if it's just to address your naivete. It's something that has to be addressed. In almost all of my YouTube videos, I talk about the fact that we all view the world by how we are. It's called frame of reference. If we're sincere and honest, we think everybody is sincere and honest, or we think that most people are. On one show, somebody said to the person who was catfished, "You're real, so you think everyone else is real." And that's exactly right. Bingo! On the money. When you're real, you think that everyone else is real, and you can't imagine somebody could not be. Okay, so let me come down off the soapbox and give you 7 ways to keep yourself from being fooled online. Whether we're naive or street smart, we get it wrong almost all the time when we try to figure out how other people are. It doesn't matter if we were raised, as I was, on the streets of the Bronx or in ivory towers, shielded from life, we can still get our impressions completely wrong. At the same time, many people are clued in and figure out the issues early on. They might hold back and feel that something's a little off, something might be an issue, and if you know the books and the workbook, you know that I have something called observation. Stick it in your back pocket and wait. But people who really want to be loved will ignore the inner tug that says something is not right here. If you have the Getting Past Your Past workbook, please do the observation exercises before you go out online. You really need to have your observations down pat. And if you're not quite sure what something is saying, stick it in your back pocket. Read the observation section of Getting Back Out There, and it will tell you how to do that. Unless and until you're willing to walk when you feel that not right or see that red flag, you're going to be disappointed. So you have to be really aware of the red flags. No matter how much other stuff you like about this person, you have to be honest about the flags. I have had clients who are streetwise and still have been emotionally bloodied by their missteps in their previous relationship. And when the person on paper is not real, they feel determined to not repeat their ignorance and/or naivete. Even in person, someone can be easily fooled because their hopes and dreams cloud the whole situation. But online, it's so much easier to fool yourself and build a relationship up in your head that doesn't exist and will never exist. Okay, so number 1, and people in the Facebook group know that I pound on this one all the time. Don't let an online relationship proceed fast without meeting somebody. There are certain things that cannot be duplicated online. It takes real life to know how someone presents themselves to the world. As I say in Getting Back Out There, check out how someone is to waiters, store clerks, other people in the public. It's important. Observation is important, and you cannot do it online. It has to be in real life. If you never see someone interact with anyone but you, you have no idea what they're really like. It's important, and it needs to happen early on. It's amazing when you look at the show and you see the meeting between the catfisher and the catfished. The catfisher almost always has this bizarre affect in response to the unraveling of their duplicity. And the catfish person is perplexed by the responses of the catfish. And often, Neve and Max half the time looks like he wants to punch somebody in the face. But it's like the affect and the response from the catfishers are so completely unpredictable when laid side by side with the person's online persona. The two often have nothing to do with the other. The person in real life is rude, crude, nasty, no conscience, just terrible. You don't know that you can trust anyone, but especially someone you only know online. So don't ever give anyone private photos or have graphic phone conversations. Catfishers are known to keep the photos and even blackmail the person if they suspect they're being catfished. I'm not a proponent of sending graphic photos to anyone because you can be blackmailed or horrifically embarrassed by a scorned lover. There was some somebody, I believe I was in court one day, in family court one day, and I listened to a case where the guy had put the ex-wife's naked photos on his Facebook page, and her parents were friends with him and saw them. That's disgusting, but it happened, and you don't want it to happen to you. If you have a picture that you wouldn't show to the entire world, do not send it to anyone. Especially someone you've never met. But I mean, don't send it to anyone. Just don't send it to anybody. And guys, most women do not want to see your private parts. Most women are like, yeah, no. I don't know why guys think that that is like something to do. Or I'll show her this. Oh, great. Yeah. The only person who's going to be impressed with your endowment is another guy. Women are just like, yeah, okay. Could you put that away now? Thanks. Bye. But don't send these. Just don't. Please. Thank you. Okay. Number 2, if you've gotten in too far, too fast, don't feel guilty about being fooled, even if you were less than truthful in the beginning. I've spoken to people who felt that they were not honest either, but to much less a degree than a true catfisher. They may have left out having young children or a nutty ex or what they did for work. They will use sometimes this lack of their honesty to try to rationalize away the other person's dishonesty. And they were so busy trying to worry about when and how to tell somebody the rest of their deep, dark secrets, they missed the signs of the other person's duplicity. It happens. Don't beat yourself up over it. Even if you left out personal details about your life in the beginning, that's not the same as catfishing someone. Those are 2 very different levels of dishonesty. Don't worry about it. It's okay not to share certain things with a person right away. You can acknowledge them, but you're not going to get into deep discussions. And I've talked about this on some of the dating podcasts. You don't want to put your personal, private information out there for everybody. Learn how to compartmentalize your life. You don't know people, and it's okay if you want to keep your kids at a distance. I did not share my life. I didn't share my address. I didn't even show people pictures of my kids. The only people that ever met my kids were people I was serious about, and very serious. I mean, yeah, just no. Do not drag people in and out of your kids' lives. It's not okay. I didn't invite people to my house. Most of the time, I didn't let even people know where I lived. I would always meet people. It's a good idea if you want to keep your dating and your personal life separate. Just let someone know that there's certain subjects that are not on the table right now. We'll talk about it more if things progress into a serious relationship, but not now. Number 3, don't generalize about anyone you haven't met or don't know well. If you hear yourself saying, I know he can be a good boyfriend, or she's the nicest person I've ever known, remember you have no evidence that that's the real person. All catfishes say and do things to keep you interested. If you think something like, I know he can be a good boyfriend, ask yourself, how do you know that? Seriously, how do you know that? Where's the evidence? I'm an attorney. Give me the evidence. Someone saying nice things or making you laugh does not a good boyfriend-girlfriend make. In getting back out there, we talk about the 3 a.m. person. That's the mark of a good partner. No superficial relationship in the world can pass that 3 a.m. test. If everyone is lollipops and gumdrop, it's not real. How someone handles stress is the real test. When someone says, I'm there for you, or you could always count on me, they're not in your real life. They're just words. You may have attached meaning to those phrases, but it may not mean a thing to them. When you say I'll be there for you, you actually will be there for people. But not everybody knows how to be there, and to many they're just words, and they have no idea how to back it up. Unless and until you're together at the 3 a.m. with the baby crying, the roof leaking, the dog needs to go, ba, 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 I'll be there for you has no meaning. If you never see them in person, you absolutely cannot judge it at all. When someone says you're the person of my dreams, it's probably true because you exist in their dreams and no place else. Number 4, it's hard to explain to people that in real life counts, not just for relationships, but for everyday life. Unplugging from all technology a few times a week is a good idea. When people spend so much time online, they don't understand how far removed from real life it actually is. It's so easy to exist in a completely superficial world on so many levels that it's easy for others to create an environment to suck you in. I worked for a top computer company in the 80s and 90s, and I was on the internet and had email long before anybody else I knew except the people I knew from that company. So I'm not a Luddite, I'm not a technophobe, but I learned very early on that superficial relationships exist in cyberspace, and many of them cannot possibly exist or survive in real life. So to avoid the lure of false relationships, it's important to take time away from smartphones and to force yourself to put the phone away and live in life without them. It's important that the phone becomes an accessory and not the center of your universe. It's hard to detox from technology, but real life and technology are two different worlds, and unless you make unplugging a priority and you do some time each and every week, you're never going to realize the difference. 5. Check your neediness at the door. The people who are catfished are usually people who need to be told they're good looking, good people, and that they matter. They need to hear things that no one in real life is telling them. Unless and until you learn to live without that kind of feedback, you're going to be a target. Again, be careful about generalizations and superlatives. When people say you and I are so much alike or you're so wonderful, think about it and ask if it could be said to anyone. One thing that charlatan psychics do is say things that could be generally applied to anyone. Catfishers do the same thing. They say things that are so general it can apply to anyone. And they also speak and seem to cause you to speak in hyperbole. This is the best thing ever. I've never felt like this. This is the love of my life. Beware things like song dedications or comparisons to gorgeous celebrities. While those things can totally happen in close relationships, it's a way of sweeping someone off their feet. Don't be fooled by song dedications or endless compliments. This is what narcissists do. It's called love bombing, and they do it well. You have a duty to love yourself enough to be careful with your precious self. If you have low self-esteem, please do self-care exercises in the book and raise the self-esteem. Do your affirmations. Healthy people may fall for catfishers, but they're so much less needy than unhealthy people, so they don't get as bloody. The healthier you are, the last chance you have of falling for the wrong person, either online or in real life. The only one responsible for what happens to you is you. In the end, you have to take responsibility for what red flags you ignored, what this isn't quite right tugs you've denied, the harping of your friends, your own neediness, and leading with your heart in foolish ways. You must take responsibility for that. And you must learn to change what got you here, wittingly or unwittingly. Number 6. Check your double standards. I watched one episode where a guy said the in real life women around him were just into games, but he didn't seem to get that talking to someone online without even a phone conversation that was a game. If you're talking to someone online, don't get hooked on the best this person seems to be. Think about the worst. What could be the worst case scenario? The episode I'm talking about showed clearly the blind spot this guy had toward women. Almost everything he said about women he knew in real life could have been applied toward the women who catfished him, and he simply couldn't see it. He called the women in his life game players, and the woman who was catfishing him was clearly playing a game. If you have skeptical friends, good for you. Run it by your friend. That's what happened with the woman that wrote this email. She said her best friend had to dump a bucket of cold water on him because she had read my articles on catfishing. She thought that it could never happen to her. And guess what? It did. Keep being honest with your friends and let them be honest with you. And if they smell something fishy, chances are something fishy. Number 7. Most of the time, the catfisher is convinced that the relationship worked before you knew who I was and that no one actually got hurt and it's not a big deal. The relationship did not work. What worked was the fantasy abilities of two people, one more gullible than the other. Don't let anyone ever feed you nonsense and ask that you accept the unacceptable. When I heard this, and I heard this over and over in the Catfish episodes, when I heard, well, things worked before you knew who I was, before you knew I was a big fat liar. No. A relationship that's built on lies does not work. Eleanor Roosevelt said, and you guys have heard me say this a million times, stand for something, you'll fall for anything, which is true. So stop fooling yourself. Beware of superlatives. You're the best thing that ever happened to me. You might be the type who would never say to someone something like that doesn't mean anything, but that doesn't mean that someone else wouldn't say it. There are so many people just slinging bullshit. You don't have to be a victim of an intentional catfish to fool yourself. In getting back out there, I walk everybody through the must-haves in their next relationship by the standards and compatibility inventory. It's where you sit down and write out exactly what you want and what you don't want. Even if you have it in your head, it helps to really think about it, commit to it, put it on paper, print it out, and have it at the ready. It's very important. You must commit to walking if a must-have isn't there or an unacceptable is. If you're dating online, the must-haves must include meeting shortly after talking or a video chat, and definitely a phone call within the first 2 weeks. If you commit to these important parameters, it can't progress further unless you're willing to renege on your own standards, which you should not be. But without having a clue as to what you want, you'll fall for the first nice person or first person parading as a nice person who texts themselves into your life. If you're falling for someone you haven't met, or worse, haven't even spoken to on the phone, that's on you. You have to have standards. You have to be able to be in touch in real life very shortly after the relationship starts, and that's important. There are many examples in the book, but one example is that so many of my clients wind up being burned by someone they have loaned money to. One way out of that is to have a be gainfully employed on your standards and compatibility inventory. If you don't have that on your list, you can find yourself not only being sweet-talked into dating a sweet but unemployed person, but giving them money. If must be gainfully employed is an absolute non-negotiable, then when you're told someone's not working, you walk, period, end of story. It doesn't matter how nice they are, how cute they are, how blah, 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 I'm getting a job tomorrow, I'm having a review, blah, blah, blah. Forget it. People who are not gainfully employed should be looking for a job rather than dating you. If you have that as a standard and you commit to walking, no amount of crazy explanations will work for you, and that's a good thing. So many people with no standards, no non-negotiables, no idea of the 3 a.m. person will meet a cute, sweet, unemployed person and find a way to rationalize why their unemployment is acceptable. It happens in real life all the time. Being duped does happen in real life, and when you have the absolute truth, you can still find a way to talk yourself into something that isn't right. But if you're online, it could be even easier to talk yourself into or out of anything. It's so important you have your must-haves lined up no matter what, but especially if you're online dating and you don't change those standards no matter what, no matter how cute a person is, no matter how nice they are, no matter how jealous your friends are, whatever it is. Even if you want to hold yourself out as a good person who thinks the best of others, don't be stupid. If you're really just naive, you have no business starting relationships online. It can't be both. You can't be naive and be tra-la-la-ing off online. If you're going to meet people online, you have to toughen up. You have to get skeptical. You have to get as streetwise as possible to avoid being an idiot. Have your standards of compatibility inventory done and stick to it no matter what. One guy on the show said, I trust people until they give me reason not to, which is completely ass backwards. It's the opposite. You shouldn't trust anyone until they've earned it, until they've proven that you can. And the person that he trusted was not trustworthy at all. And she had given him plenty of reasons not to trust her, and yet he just blew right by them time and time again. So him, I trust people until they give me reason not to. I mean, she handed him like a whole crap load of reasons, and he still went like, yeah, that's nice, I still trust you. Okay. The world is never going to run out of material for the show Catfish. Nev himself was catfish, which is how the whole thing started. But he does the show to let others know about it and to help get the word out that so many people are not who they say they are. Max and Nev's efforts will put a dent into catfishes and good for them. But if you can avoid it and help others, good for you. I hope this keeps you off the show. Okay, please review the 7 points, and hey, let's stay safe out there. Again, I know this is quite the talking to, but I want you guys to be safe. Safe and not sorry. Please, please, please review the podcast when you get a chance, and send email for future episodes, questions, comments, whatever, to meanladytalkingpodcast@gmail.com. This is Susan Elliott signing off. Have a good day, everybody. Take care. Be safe. Talk to you soon. Bye-bye.